Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March meeting of the Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is John McCreary. I'll be serving as your chairman today. We're going to begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Whitehaven, would you proceed, please?
Mr. Norcross.
Here.
Ms. O'Connell.
Here.
Dr. Pritchard.
Here.
Vice Chair Sharp.
Here.
Mr. Tolles.
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks.
Here.
Mr. Fleming.
Here.
Ms. Wallace. Mr. Chairman.
Present.
Have a quorum.
All right. Let's see. Just before we move forward any further, let me let you know that item number 3, which is the landfill on 10th Road, I believe, has been withdrawn. So if you are here today to hear or discuss anything on item number 3, it will not be heard today, and it has been withdrawn, as well as number 15. That has been withdrawn. So if you're here for either one of those, you're welcome to stay and watch the rest of the cases, but if you're waiting to speak on that, it will not be heard. All right, I'd like to remind everybody that there's copies of today's agenda located in the back of the room if you were to need them, and if you'd like to be a speaker on any of our cases today, if you would please fill out one of our speaker cards and bring it down front to one of our OPD staff members. When that agenda item is called, you'll be given an opportunity to speak. At this point, I'd like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter at the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have a direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberations on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purposes of us maintaining a quorum. Can we get a motion to approve our minutes from the last meeting, please?
So moved.
We've got a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
And we've got a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes from the last meeting? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that motion carries. We get a secretary's report, please.
I do not have one this morning, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Again, items number 3 and 15, items number 3 and 15 have been withdrawn and they will not be heard today. For those of you who are new to our process, we'll explain the procedures. The item number in the case from today's agenda will be read by either the consent agenda chairperson or the regular agenda chairperson. The OPD staff will then give their report, after which the applicant will have 5 minutes to present their case. Following each speaker, the members can ask questions of the speaker at that time, and the applicant will be followed by the opposition, which will also have 5 minutes to present their case. Following each of the opposition speakers, the board members can also ask questions of those speakers if needed. The applicant will then have a 2-minute rebuttal period. Following all the presentations and after the parties have been heard, we will close the public hearing portion of the case and we'll make a motion to vote on the application. We'll get a second, and then we'll discuss it amongst ourselves as the board members, and following the board's deliberations and discussion, we'll take a final vote on the case. If an applicant or a speaker wishes to be heard at the conclusion of the public hearing, if a board member wishes to get any further clarification on the case, we can make a motion that would reopen the public hearing portion of the agenda item, and then a 2/3 affirmative vote of the board is required to reopen the public hearing portion of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, the same rules will apply to both parties, and then we will go back to the original motion and close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and take the final vote. Again, we ask you fill out an attendance and speaker's card if you wish to be heard today. We also ask that if there are multiple people on any one item, that we would like you to divide your time up accordingly and be courteous to the people who are here for the other cases. It's oftentimes hard to have 30 people that want to speak on a case in a 5-minute time period. We try to expand the time just a little bit within the protocols I'm given, but we do ask you to keep your comments within the time frame that's allowed. I don't know who that person would be when the gavel comes down on the time being over, but I promise you it's not personal. I don't even know who it is at this point, but I do need to stay on the protocols that are given to me. All right, lastly, I'd like to ask everybody to silence your cell phones to not interrupt today's proceedings. So at this point, I'm going to introduce to my right, Ms. Lisa Wilbanks will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read our consent agenda, and once that agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of those items individually, please come forward and give us the item number and we'll pull the case. We will then vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote, and then following that vote, we'll hear the items that were pulled. Ms. Wilbanks, you proceed, please.
Sir, item number 1, case S-1838 in Whitehaven. The request is reconfiguration of 2 lots at 460 and 470 West Holmes into 3 lots. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 3, case PD 18-42 in Well Station. This case has been withdrawn. Item number 5, case number S1904 in South City. The request is a 4-lot major subdivision on the west side of Danny Thomas, south of Vance. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 7, case SAC 1902 in the Pinch District. The request is the closure of north-south and east-west alley segments between Jackson, 2nd, Overton, and 3rd. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 8, case number PD 1902 in North Memphis. The request is a new O'Reilly's Auto Parts on the north side of Pleasant View, west of Sycamore View. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 12, case SUP 1904 in Whitehaven. The request is a funeral chapel at 1650 East Shelby Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 13, case SUP 19-05 in North Central Shelby County. The request is a wedding and event center at 6133 Covington Pike. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. And item number 14, case SUP 1907 in Whitehaven. The request is car sales at 951 East Brooks. Staff recommendation is holding for 1 month. Item number 15, case C97-135. This case has also been withdrawn.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. All right, so in summary, our consent agenda is item number 1, number 3, which is withdrawn, number 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14 as a whole, and 15 as withdrawn. Anybody wish to pull?
Mr. Chairman, I just received a card on number 13.
That will be pulled from the consent agenda. So our remaining consent agenda is 1, 3 is withdrawn, 5, 7, 8, 12, 14 as a whole, and 15 as withdrawn.
Excuse myself from number.
All right, let the record show that Ms. Sharp is going to recuse herself from item number 5 on the consent agenda vote. All right, don't see anybody wishing to pull any additional cases. Can we get a motion, please?
Move to approve item number 1, case ST 18-38. Item number 3, case PD 18. Item number 5, case S1904. Item number 7, case SAC 19-02. Item number 8, case PD 19-02. Item number 12, case SUP 19-04. Item number 14, case SUP 1907 as a whole, and item number 15 as withdrawn.
Thank you. We've got a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, we've got a second. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? I hear none. Assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that motion carries. At this time, I'd like to introduce to my left Dr. Libby Pritchard, who will serve as our regular agenda chairperson for the remaining cases. Dr. Pritchard, would you proceed, please?
Yes, sir. Agenda item number 2, PD 18-29, 9 Park
Jason.
adjacent. Modification and site plan approval of cottage development at 672 North Prescott. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
All right, item number 2, we have the applicant present and opposition on cards. So we will hear a staff report, please, Mr. Penzis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeffrey Penzis, Office of Planning and Development. This is for the city cottage development. The location is 627 North Trezevant Street and 643 McConnell Street. The owner/applicants are New Bellevue Baptist Church, Apple Partners, and Eddie Kircher Construction. The request is for site plan and major modification approval for a 17-lot place of worship and single-family residential plan development. The existing zoning was PD 1829, which is approved by City Council on October 9th, 2018. This is just a location map showing us in the Midtown neighborhood. This is the vicinity map. 306 public hearing notices were mailed. This is just an aerial of the property. Currently, the only thing that exists on the site is the church. And this is just the zoning map. This is the land use map. It's primarily surrounded by single family to the north, west, and south, and multifamily to the. And these are just some site photos of the subject property. So this was the concept plan as it was approved at City Council, and there are some changes between this one and the new one. Essentially, the cottages now have rear access through a service drive. And The lots are also, I believe, slightly larger than they were previously, which also increased the square footage of the homes. And this is just the landscape plan. The erosion control plan, and the grading and drainage plan. And these are conceptual elevations of the houses. There's just, I think, 6 total I'll scroll through. So the conclusions are essentially the proposed site plan has been redesigned, increasing the single-family residential lot sizes, increasing the heated home square footage, adding 2 additional lots, and reconfiguring the direction the houses will face on the lots through the addition of the rear access service drives. And we believe that these design revisions have led to a more aesthetically pleasing final site plan. And additionally, there were new conditions added that were basically agreements between the neighboring residences and the applicant. And with that, we recommend approval with conditions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Penzis. All right, applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brenda Salamito Baser, Salamito Land Planning, 1779 Kirby Parkway, Memphis. We appreciate the ability and the opportunity to work with the neighborhood and with Ms. Cindy Reeves on this project. We think it was a very beneficial month during this 1-month delay, and we believe that there were a lot of things accomplished that were mutually beneficial. I can speak for my clients and the applicants involved in this case that they want to be good neighbors and want to continue to provide this type of cooperation throughout the remainder of the process. We are in agreement with the conditions as they have been published in the staff report. Through this process, we have provided approximately 10 to 15 additional items that the neighbors have requested. So with that, I'll reserve any time for questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Salamito. All right, opposition, or does anybody have any questions for Ms. Salamito at this time? Okay. All right, opposition, I think Mr. Goff is the card I have.
I think that I'm going to be speaking for the opposition. I'm Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
Word for Mr. Goff, is he? Sir? You waive or wait?
Wait.
Okay, thank you, sir. Go ahead, Ms. Reeves.
I want to thank you, Mr. McQuarrie, for having me help bring this together, and I think that we have come up with some really good conditions, and we're in agreement with the conditions. The one concern that the neighbors did want to still have on the record was that they have always been concerned about drainage and density, and as we all know, the drainage will be designed and reviewed and approved by city engineering. It will also be approved by TDAC, and they are meeting with TDAC next week from what they're telling me. So we appreciate all the efforts that they've done in order to address a lot of our concerns. So we really thank everybody, and we're so excited that we are in agreement with the conditions.
Fantastic. All right, thank you, Ms. Reeves. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Reeves at this time? All right, maybe not any questions, but I would, let's see, is there any other opposition? Mr. Goff, are you good? Okay. All right. In a rebuttal period, Ms. Salamito?
Just with regard again to reiterate, drainage will be taken care of both by city and state, and with regard to the density has been basically the same since day one when we received our original approval. So with that is a nominal difference. Appreciate your support in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, get a motion, please.
-29.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All right, I would like to say on behalf of our board that I've enjoyed the way this process has worked. Last month or so it came in and there was a lot of misinformation, a lot of lack of clarity. I think the development team shored up their side of it a little bit, bringing in an additional partner in Mr. Kircher, who brought a lot of clarity to that side of the table and experience. I think Ms. Reeves taking on the challenge of getting the opposition cohesive and getting their concerns addressed, and the fact that Ms. Salamito and Ms. Reeves were able to work together. This was a pretty volatile case last month, and to get from where we were to where we are, I just want to say on behalf of our board, it's very much appreciated for the entire development team, opposition, applicant, everybody. It's where the system kind of worked at its best in this particular instance. So, all right, let's see. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you again. Next case, please.
Agenda item number 4, S19-03, Midtown 4-lot major subdivision at 2115 Jefferson. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pritchard. All right, item number 4. I know the applicant is present. Do we have any cards on item number 4? All right, so we will get a staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Whitehead with the Office of Planning and Development. We gave a presentation upstairs, so I'll go through these fairly quickly. This is a proposal for a 4-lot major subdivision for 4 attached single-family homes, otherwise known as townhomes, located in the Midtown neighborhood of Memphis. There was a slight change in the design of this subdivision plat between the time it was originally submitted and the time the staff report was published. This image shows the original site plan with a 14-foot 9 3/8 inch setback. The primary difference between that and the revised plat or preliminary plan is that setback from Jefferson, which now shows at a 21-foot 6-inch setback. This is part of the a recorded but not approved subdivision, Lot 4, shown here on the original plat. With this approval, if this subdivision is approved, it is tied to elevations. These are the elevations that the applicant's architect has presented to us, showing 4 townhomes oriented to the alley on the east side of the site. And I do want to point out something I pointed out upstairs. There's 2 factors that make this, the likelihood of this development being precedential, somewhat diminished. Number 1, the fact that this is multifamily zoning, RU3, residential urban. And number 2, because townhouses have to have right-of-way frontage, the fact that this is at the corner of 2 rights-of-way, one being a street, one being an alley. So really to have this kind of development, townhouses in the RU3 district, you have to be at the corner of 2, either at the corner of 2 rights-of-way or have a wide enough lot. Zooming in on the site, this is the block of Jefferson between Rembert on the west and Cooper on the east. We have had a lot of comments from the block of Jefferson to the east of this site, which this map takes our zoning map that features zoning district boundaries and red lines and adds color to it, red being the RU3 multifamily district, yellow being the R6 single family district. That boundary, which is roughly just to the east of Cooper, between the residential single family and the residential multifamily, has been, for the most part, pretty static, at least since 1954. This is an image from the 1954 zoning map showing single family in blue dots and multifamily in orange dots. So we look at the section of the UDC, the Unified Development Code, that governs what uses you can place in what zoning district. If you throw away the entire UDC because it's just too overwhelming and you keep just a few pages, these are the pages you keep, the use table. So we see the R6 zoning district, which is single family, allows only single family detached. Move over a couple columns in the RU3 zoning district, you see that yes, indeed, single family detached houses are permitted, but so are single family attached, which has 3 subtypes, semi-attached and 2-family, and also townhouse, which is the subject of this morning's discussion. We also find that multifamily, 3 kinds of multifamily to be specific, are permitted in the RU3 district. Large homes, which are small apartment buildings, generally quadplexes, stacked townhouses, and apartment buildings. Okay, the other section of the code that is important for housing is Article 3, particularly section 3.7.2, which tells us not only which housing types you can do in which zoning districts, but what are the rules for those housing types. So we see townhouse requires a minimum lot size of 1,300 square feet. Those lots have to be at least 18 feet wide, and the building on those lots can be no taller than 45 feet. We go on the far end of this table and we see that apartments are permitted in this zoning district but require a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size. So this particular site is less than that, so apartments would not be permitted by right. That's an important thing to note. Or a semblance of this table existed in the 1981 code. You go further back under the 1955 zoning code and you find that you did not have these lot size minimums, which is how and why we got a lot of apartment buildings constructed on small lots in this zoning district. It wasn't called RU3 at the time, it was RMM, and going further back, different lettering. So going around the property, here's our subject site. When Google drove by several years ago, the alley in question that the townhouses will face is there on your left or to the east of the property. We go around on the back side, and this does reflect the recent fire damage to the property that is on the site presently. Here is the alley. Again, this is a recent shot on the east side of the lot. Moving around in a clockwise formation, we see the house at the corner of Cooper and Jefferson. The block just north of Jefferson along Cooper on the west side is a dentist's office, an apartment building, and a house turned office, respectively. Going south of Jefferson along Cooper, this is a single-family home at 71 South Cooper, followed by a 63 South Cooper, which is probably an 8-plex apartment building, and then followed by an office building to its south. Wrapping around on Court, on the south side of the subject property, we see a duplex, one half of which I believe is occupied by an office. Moving all the way down, we're now going down Madison, taking a ride on Rembert to get back on the other end of Jefferson. We see a late 80s, early 90s infill that is inwardly faced. Fronting along Jefferson is this fence, followed by, on the north side of that block, these apartments, probably built in the 1950s, followed by these apartments built in probably the early 60s. Here's another apartment building across the street. This one in particular was built under the 1955 code because obviously it doesn't have 10,000 square feet, which was instituted with the 81 code. Back to our subject site and the neighbor to its west, which is single family. Here's a view from the subject site looking westward, and you do have a predominance of single family homes. Much of the discussion surrounding this proposal is in relation to the building across the street, which was developed by the same applicant. It was processed as a minor subdivision approvable by staff, and we'll discuss in a moment how that came to be. Here's a photograph from the subject site looking north across the street to those townhouses. Those, like these, are attached single-family homes. Here's the plat for that development and the elevations. The key difference, probably in one word or a couple words, is the roof line between this approved development and the one that is subject to this discussion. The roof line is now articulated to better differentiate the four townhouses. Okay, well, how did that one get approved as a minor subdivision? The zoning is the same, RU3, but when we go to the contextual infill standards section of the UDC, 3.9.2, B1D, this is how do we know we apply the contextual infill standards to a proposal, to a house, to a subdivision, etc. Well, we see in D, it says the site is abutted on two or more sides by parcels containing existing single-family detached or single-family attached dwellings built on lots platted or established by deed before 1950 in a residential single in a residential zoning district. And for the purpose of this item, the term abut can include properties across the street or alley. So when we look at the map, those red numbers don't come very clearly on this map, but that's 2112 on the north side of Jefferson, 2115, the subject proposal on the south side, and we see that 2112 is abutted by on only one side by single family, attached or detached, whereas the property that is the subject of this discussion is abutted on two sides. So the contextual infill standards do not apply to 2112, but they do apply to 2115, which is why the former was approved as a minor subdivision and the latter is here before you today. We'll discuss that in a minute. So now that we know the contextual infill standards are triggered, we look at the 2 pages in the UDC that talk about contextual infill standards. And in my staff report, I go through how and why, in my opinion, each of those boxes are checked off, save the one box that is labeled garages and carports. Garages and carports, well, I'll just read 392H. Garages and carports. Street-facing garages and carports may be allowed if an alley is not present and street-facing garages or carports are part of the dominant character of all properties fronting on the same block face. Well, here the alley is the street, so when we see the word street, we can say that that would apply here since these townhouses face the alley. That is the front of the townhouses, so that is triggered. We go over here, 391D, and we see that street-facing garages and carports are not permitted with cottages, townhouses, and stacked townhouses. That one is much more clear, not permitted, period. Street-facing garages, if we're going to accept the fact, which I have in part of my assumptions, that that alley is a street, well, then this has to be triggered. If that alley is a street, that alley is a street for the purposes of all these sections of the code. And so now we know not only are the contextual infill standards triggered, but there is one of those that is not being met. Okay. Why do I say that? Well, here's the plat again, and here are those elevations. Those are carports. Admittedly, they are flex space carports that can be used as, and Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the carport aspect of these townhouses is on the right-hand side to the bottom floor window. Those are open to the air, so those are flex space in that they can be carports or patios, which are street-facing, obviously. Okay, so now we know that that is triggered. At the conclusion of my report, Mr. Chairman, momentarily, I will get into the importance of that. But very briefly, I wanted to look at the heterogeneity of land uses on this block. This map shows land uses. Multifamily, that's quad and up, are shown in red. Offices are shown in purple. Blue indicates duplex, which is, I should have mentioned, the subject site is being currently utilized as a duplex, and yellow are the single-family homes. Most of the houses on this block are indeed yellow and are indeed single-family detached, as opposed to single-family attached. Zooming in, though, we see of the properties on that block, there's 12 of them, including a couple of apartments. 10 of those are non-owner occupied. 2 are owner occupied, and as I mentioned upstairs in the executive session, we have a support letter from one of those 2 owner occupants. So that brings us back to a couple sections of the code I wanted to mention. 392B4. 392B4 says that contextual infill standards may be waived through the subdivision process. Okay, Whitehead, why wasn't this a minor? Well, minor subdivisions themselves in their approval criteria say all aspects of Article 3 must be met. Well, Article 3 includes Section 392, the contextual infill standards, so I read that to mean a minor subdivision must have no contextual infill standard waivers. And if you have a contextual infill standard waiver, you get pushed up to a major. Okay. However, they may be waived through the subdivision process provided there's a finding that there will be no damage to the health, safety, welfare of the immediate vicinity. In staff's opinion, that is being met, particularly with the diversity of land uses on the block. The second section of the code I wanted to mention is 977H2, which did not exist up until maybe a couple years ago. We added it to the code because I was fearful that Tennessee would be like at least one neighboring jurisdiction, North Carolina. In North Carolina, if your local zoning code or your local subdivision regulations don't have some language with regard to approval criteria of subdivisions related to compatibility or lot size, subdivisions are basically by right requests. Well, I am really bothered, as I'm sure the 10 members of this body are bothered, by the fact that we would send something to you and say, let's have a big public hearing on this. Oh, and you have to vote yes. If I were you, I would say, time out, don't send me anything and have me vote on something where I have no choice to vote. So we added 977H2 that says, among the other factors, a subdivision does not just indicate a preliminary or final plat that shows that the lot sizes meet the bare minimums, the widths meet the bare minimums, but also that those lots are compatible with the lot sizes around it. We added the compatibility language to the UDC a couple years ago so we can have thorough public meetings and not be forced to approve all subdivisions, because that, I don't think, is the intent of any subdivision, and I would recommend that all zoning jurisdictions, of which there are hundreds of thousands from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, add some language to that. Otherwise, their rejections of subdivisions may come under some scrutiny. With that, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends approval with conditions. Those conditions are included in your staff report. Primarily, that the conditions tie this approval to the elevations that have been submitted and the improvement of the alley that onto which the townhouses will face. I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. All right, at this time, we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good morning. My name is Laurinas Petrauskas, and I live at 417 North Avalon. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead, for the staff report. We agree with the staff conditions and the recommendation. So let's begin with 2112 Jefferson. 2112 Jefferson is nearing completion. We plan on selling the townhomes in the low to mid 300s price range. Our goal with this project is to increase home ownership on this block of Jefferson, in addition to increasing density and viability of Overton Square while maintaining a walkable neighborhood. We held a neighborhood meeting on March 4th and improved our new design, with the following changes. We increased the Jefferson setback, modified the structure by creating 4 individual gabled roofs, and we're alternating color variations to break up the overall form of the building. We feel as though 2115, the new project, will nicely complement the townhomes under construction at 2112, as well as new development around the square. I've been a resident of Midtown for 12 years, and personally I'm excited to see new growth in the area, such as Ballet Memphis, Hattaloo, Playhouse on the Square, and other new developments slated to start construction. So in conclusion, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to be here, and I hope for your approval today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thank you, sir. All right, opposition. I think I've got 4 cards, no particular order, whoever's ready.
My name is Carol Ann Mallory, and I live at 2242 Jefferson, and I'm here to speak for many of the Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Ma'am.
Okay. Will you all stand? These are the people in opposition of this project. most of us, I believe, were unaware of what was happening on the 2115 part of Jefferson, or 2112, the structure that's almost completed, until it was almost completed. Most of us, or at least I thought that the structure, when I first saw it, was some sort of temporary structure, either a warehouse or some kind of scaffolding. When we did learn what the intended development was, which was a subdivision, I think we were all pretty surprised that this structure was considered a subdivision. But we had never had, it was named a subdivision and a minor subdivision. Therefore, the neighborhood and the Midtown area residents never had any opportunity to hear from the developers at a neighborhood meeting or have any input at all to this development. We never had an opportunity to express the fact that we think this structure, the existing one, and certainly the proposed one, are completely inappropriate for our neighborhood. I should point out that this project appears anything but minor to us. It's double, the existing one and the one proposed are both double the height of the house, the adjacent houses. It looms over the Midtown neighborhood and can be seen from East Parkway and Overton Square. The second set of townhomes, described as a mirror image of the first set, will also tower over other homes in the area. It will be turned sideways to the street and face an alley. The views from the homes adjacent to the townhomes are and will be ruined, as will most likely their property values. These 4-unit townhomes are being built on lots that once held a duplex on one and a single-family residence on the other. This is every homeowner's worst nightmare. The tortuous siting and the efforts to cram this enormous structure onto small lots is a travesty. The design is completely ill-suited for the street and this neighborhood. There are guidelines and regulations that developers are called to observe. Land use standards and regulations call for the developer to, quote, to look to the surrounding context for guidance in construction and reinforce the traditional character of existing established neighborhoods. This is an established neighborhood with properties that range in size and value and architecture. Finally, this construction is labeled an East End Syndicate subdivision. East End, Overton Parkways, has been designated a National Historic District, and it was named, I believe, in 1995. That designation is insufficient to protect it from developments like this, but it should be considered. Its history and its character certainly should be considered in approving a development like these. The proposed property, even if it faced the street, even if there were no garages on the front of the homes, even if it complied with the setbacks or the front porch requirements, it still would not be a fit for this neighborhood. And we respectfully ask this board to deny approval of this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We're supposed to have 5 minutes for each side. Ms. Mallory took the entire 5 minutes. I'm going to extend the time. I know it's an emotional case. I know people need to be heard, but if we could, I'm going to double it. I'll give you some additional rebuttal time if you need it. but if we could divide our time up accordingly here in this next 5-minute period, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board, for hearing this. My name is Sharon Younger. I live at 2240 Jefferson. I also own a property at 56 North Cooper, which is in the proximity right across the street from this property. And I've brought some slides today to kind of help give you some context of this property and our neighborhood. By the way, I've sat on Land Use and Zoning Board, so I know what it's like a little bit to sit in your seat and work through a very complicated staff recommendation. But our neighborhood is one it really is as complex as Mr. Whitehead has laid it out. We're bungalows, we're estates, we're multifamily, it's all jammed in together. But up to now, we've maintained a distinctive sense of place, and we've worked together and collaborated to keep that there. We're between Overton Park and Overton Square, so we've had to doggedly hang on as those two amenities have sort of withered and waned and come back. And we were initially very happy to see new construction along Jefferson and welcome it into the neighborhood until it grew and grew and grew until it bloomed over and blotted out our view in the neighborhood. Our neighborhood has submitted some photographs. This is one of which, this is from the Winbigler family. This is their view now looking to the west, so you can see the scale of the property that we're looking at. In the next slide that was also submitted, this is what the view of the next door neighbor now is. So you can again see the difference in scale, materials, and the entire quality of life experience that are there. Our neighborhood has worked together, and we've carefully reviewed the application for this development, and we found some things that we want to bring to your attention, because in this case, you actually have to approve some waivers to even approve this, and the staff has very carefully pointed that out to you. If you could, Mr. Whitehead, I wanted to show a couple of technical slides. As you can see, the proposed property is not on a corner, and it does not face a major street. It faces an alley, which currently is only about 8 feet wide. So in some instances, you're asked to look at this as an alley, and in other instances, you're asked to consider it the main street. Which is it? That has to be determined. Either way it goes, you have some problems with waivers that need to be addressed. Looking at the next slide, this is a list of where we see that this proposal is not in compliance with the UDC. It doesn't have frontage on a public street. They face what is either an alley or not an alley. So the setbacks would have to be 20 feet if it is a street. If it's not a street, then you don't have the street frontage, so you have a conundrum there. Also, the lot widths are nowhere near the average size of the lot widths along that single-family residential. It only allows the garages facing either what is the alley or the street. It doesn't have front porches. So basically, you've been asked to consider some waivers and approve something that we as a neighborhood consider a very major change to not only the immediate neighborhood, but the greater neighborhood, because it has changed the view for a number of us. And I have a couple more context photos that we'll look at just very quickly. I'm going to skip through these and go directly to the pictures of the neighborhood, Mr. Whitehead, if I could. Again, this is what it looks like looking up Jefferson. You can see the height of the building there. In the next photograph, this is from the apartments. There are multifamily. We have always embraced density multifamily. That is not a problem. But you can see how this property owner, who has just recently upgraded this old 1950s building, which other people might have considered undesirable, their view is now changed dramatically. So basically, this is a big problem for us in terms of how we see it. It's very emotional, and we ask that you deny this application simply by sticking very closely to the agreed upon standards. We're not asking you to go out of the way. We're not asking you to make a judgment call. We're just asking you to strictly apply what is in the UDC, because if you don't, we'll wind up with another building like 2115, and we will have even more of our landscape marred by this type of development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. That's not fair to the opposition to sway the room like that. Let's try to keep our decorum. All right, one more.
My name is Gordon Alexander, 179 South Rembert Street. I just come on behalf of a lot of organizations and neighborhoods in Midtown supporting the residents in the rejection of this project. For the longest time, the city leaders here have envied Nashville's rapid growth, and justifiably so, but in their haste to develop the city, we seems to be promoting growth where our overriding concern is the increase of property taxes. If we're going to approve new development with only higher property taxes in mind, we're doomed to become the new Nashville, which in my opinion is losing a lot of their character and a lot of their historic buildings in the race to become America's big new city. Overall sentiment in the neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood in Midtown, is 99% against this planned development. And the opinions of us who live here matter, and we urge you to reject this project. It's way out of scale, it does not fit the neighborhood, and it only sets a precedent for more development like this. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, I think we're out of time, but at the same time, I've got a couple of cards here. If you have a point, I don't want to try not to cut you off. I want to be gracious to you, but if you have a point that hasn't been made, I'm more than willing to listen. If you have a repetitive message, then I think we're smart enough to hear that. So.
Thank you so much. June West, 2282 Madison, Memphis Heritage. First of all, I want to say this is not against modern architecture. That is not the point here. This is not about good design and scale design. The building is a nice building. It's got sustainability to it, but in this neighborhood, it is inappropriate. But I want to say officially on the record that Memphis Heritage does not oppose modern architecture styles and sustainable design as long as it fits in a neighborhood. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you, Ms. West. Does anybody have any questions for any of the... All right, we'll go back to a rebuttal period for the applicant, and if you need a little additional time, more than the stated time, I'll be happy to give it to you.
Mr. Whitehead, would you mind pulling up the photo of 83 Cooper, the triplex abutting 2112? It had a car in the parking lot. The opposition mentioned that the property owners just went through renovation. I think is that 63 Cooper, or that's 83?
That's on the north side of Jefferson, the other one.
The other one, yes. The one...
Middle.
Yes. It's hard to see. There's a multifamily triplex there that's built as townhomes. They're individual structures. It's registered as a commercial building. One owner. Talked to the owner. They're really excited about what we've built so far, and they're happy to see more development. I think the letter of support is in the staff report from Mr. Jeremy. And we've talked to the neighbors of the Victorian quadplex that's directly on the other side, the west side of 2112. And before we even started the project, they were in favor of it. They're glad to see that some of these rundown homes are being replaced with something new. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. Get a motion, please.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, move approval of agenda item number 4, case number S19-03.
All right, get a second?
Second.
Oh, you got a second. All right, discussion amongst our board members. Yes, Dr. Pritchard?
Mr. Chairman, there is a place for the type of structure across the street from the proposed housing. This is not the place nor the time for that. The housing which has been put on the east side of Cooper, individual detached homes, are very appropriate. I don't know of anyone who doesn't think they're very nice. But this structure is way out of character with the neighborhood. It's much too tall. It's just inappropriate. And I don't know what else I can say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Anybody else? Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to agree with Dr. Pritchard. I think that it's an interesting design, but it is not at all compatible with the surrounding, and that is something that we are asked to review, and it just doesn't fit in with this neighborhood.
I'd like to see how many here are in support of the project. Okay. Thank you. And how many are against?
He was asking how many people were in support of the project in the room. All right.
How many people are against?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Anybody else? All right. So, tough one, as they said. So there's a lot of people here that are in opposition to that. I'm curious, the people, I think you said you all live on Jefferson. How many of you live east of Cooper? All right, and how many west of Cooper? Okay, so it's a little bit 50-50. You know, I'm out on a little bit of a shaky limb here, obviously, in the room, and I'm not looking to cause any trouble, but the thing for me was that when they drew the map up there, they showed the difference between the multifamily and the single family. I think Mr. Whitehead, the single family and multifamily, not zoning map, but I guess it was zoning map for multifamily and single family. I would be the first to say if this was on the east side of Cooper, I wouldn't be for it. I think when you have the kind of projects you guys have, and you have a beautiful neighborhood all at Cooper Young, you have dumpsters in the driveway where people are investing in keeping that look, and I'm 1,000% for that. I really think that that's important to keep that look and keep that when people are making the investment in that. I've been in this block between Cooper and Tucker 4 times in the last 2 weeks. I don't see that level of investment. Quite frankly, I see a block that has really got a lot of deferred maintenance, and I think that some development would be helpful there. The apartments that are immediately to the west, or two blocks down to the west, you know, they were probably the bomb in their time, but they're 30 or 40 years old and not necessarily the same thing that you have on the east side of Cooper. So I don't sometimes see what's wrong with some change. I don't think we should be, as one said, I don't think that we should be unabashed and be the next Nashville, but I do think there's opportunity to create some change. I think there's some opportunity to redefine a market. We've had a multi-million-dollar investment in Overton Park, and it should bleed out to the additional circumference and circles around that and allow people to make an investment. We got a developer here. I looked up the median price point on that street. It was $57,000. We've got a guy that's made an investment here that is going to try to sell units for $300,000. I think when the tide rises in the harbor, you know, certainly all ships go up. So, like I said, I'm probably on a shaky limb, but I like the idea of a guy taking a risk on a development and trying to do something different and trying to re-energize a block. And I think what's going to happen is it'll re-energize the entire block. My son lives in another city and went in the exact same situation, was about the second or third person to buy a house on a street that looked just like that, and he bought one half of a duplex that frankly was a little out of character at the time it was built. In the 4 years he's been there, I would say it's gone from 90-10 to the 10-90, where everything's been new and the investment's been made, and it's been a very vibrant community, and everybody's property values has gone up, and I think development does that. I think this applicant took a beating in social media that's probably worse than I've ever seen, and he listened to that. He backed his property up a little bit off the street. He used new materials. He created a different elevation to not look like one solid unit, but created 4 individual units. And for me, I think he listened and he tried to do the best he could with what he had at that particular point in time. So I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm going to support the application, and I'm telling you why. I think this is going to go on to City Council. I'm trying to give you some feedback as to where my heart is on it. And I think that the guy is trying to do the right thing, and I think we need development in that area. So, anybody else have any comments?
I would say I don't think it's the development that's the problem. I think, and it came up in several conversations, that the particular project is looming. And I think that's where the opposition is. I don't think it's opposition to development. I think that people would be very supportive to investment in their neighborhood. But I think it's the height that is really driving a lot of the conversation.
All right. All right, I assume you're ready to vote. We'll do a roll call, Mr. Whitehead. All those, please.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Wallace,
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell, Dr. Pritchard, Ms. Sharp,
No.
Tolles,
No.
Ms. Wilbanks, Mr. Norcross,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
5 yes, 4 no.
All right, that motion carries. All right, next case, please.
Chairman, agenda item number 9, PD 19-03, North Whitehaven Waste Transfer Facility at 621 East Brooks. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Mr. Whitehead, do you have any cards on this one? All right, we've got a card against the in opposition. Is the applicant present on item number 6? Reeves, right?
Oh,
I'm sorry. What
called
you
out
call?
the wrong one.
Yeah, you called out the wrong one. I'm sorry.
We'll go back to agenda item number 6, S19-05, Normal Station, 3-lot major subdivision at the southeast corner of Kearney and Eccles. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
All right, so that is item number 6. So applicant is present. Is there any opposition? I got Mr. Blakely, maybe? Blakely? Okay. All right. So we'll get a staff report since we've got opposition.
All right, Dustin Shane, Office of Planning and Development. This is S1905. It's located at the southeast corner of Eccles Street and Kearney Avenue. The applicant is Griffin Elkington Investments, and the request is a 3-lot re-subdivision. The existing zoning is R6. The project is located in the Normal Station neighborhood in the University District. 117 public notices were sent out on February 26. The lot is 0.46 of an acre. Here's an aerial showing the intersection of Kearney and Eccles and the subject property. Zoning, as stated earlier, is R6. There's an area of zone RU1 with duplexes just to the south. Your land uses in the vicinity are mostly single-family residential with some duplexes, and the university properties to the north. Here's your site plan showing your 3-lot subdivision oriented towards Eccles. There's going to be 2 curb cuts there on the 2 southern lots on Eccles, and then 1 on Kearney on the northern lot. Here's showing some shots from Eccles at the existing home on that site. Here's showing that site from Kearney. And this is looking at the vicinity around. You see just mostly single-family residential. So this is a re-subdivision. That's why it's before you as a major subdivision. The lots meet all the bulk regulations and the proposals in character with the neighborhood. Our recommendation is just that there should be front porches because of contextual infill standards, and also that any driveways should conform to the relevant section of the UDC. And also, it is in the Black Bayou sensitive drainage area, but because of the small scope of the project, there is no mandatory detention required. Here's our conditions spelled out, and that concludes my presentation.
All right, applicant. I was trying to look through to find something in the case here. Apologies. Go ahead.
Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200. We feel this is good development. It's consistent with the other redevelopment on Eccles and in this area, and we would hope that the Land Use Control Board could support this application. We feel that bringing in 3 new homes in this area will help increase property values, and we're ready to make a big investment. So we would appreciate your vote.
Thank you,
We
ma'am.
would also like to add a condition that the detention is being waived due to section 9.12.3 and it being less than 1 acre.
And that's an agreeable condition with staff, I'm sure.
It is, yes.
All right, thank you. All right, sir, you have a opposition?
Thank you. My name is Charles Belenke. My address is 5019 Welshire Avenue, 38117. I have a couple of concerns about this. I think it relates to what Normal Station is. Right now, I think Normal Station is largely a student housing area, just because of its proximity and the fact that many of the homes there are older and somewhat depreciated. I don't want to see this become a rabbit warren. I don't want to see this become 3 stories tall. I don't see how you can put curb cuts in and then also say you want front porches, unless, of course, you're going to park on the porch. It seems to me that front porches are appropriate, but then you don't need the curb cuts, but then you have the problem of too much street parking, especially if you build 3 stories or higher. So I would say that this is a project that you should approve, but limited to 1 story, which is slightly less than the current zoning would allow, so that you don't end up with a lot of people packed in there and a lot of cars parked on the street, a lot of students renting individual rooms, but instead have 3 single-family homes that attract more stable occupants. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, you have a rebuttal period, Ms. Reeves?
Thank you. These homes are going to be built by Griffin Elkington, and his typical style home is not a 3-story home. It usually is a 1.5 to 2-story house, and it will be very consistent with everything on the block. His target price is around $300,000, and they are going to be for sale. They are not rental homes. So we think that this is a good development, and we would appreciate the Land Use Control Board to approve this application.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Blakely or Ms. Reeves? All right, get a motion, please.
Yes, move approval of agenda item number 6, case number S19-030.
Second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion carries.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, condition number 4 will read, no detention shall be required, period.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Case, please.
Agenda item number 9, case number PD. Recommendation, this is for a waste transfer facility at 621 East 4th. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Okay. All right, applicant is present. I've got probably going on 15 cards in opposition. I would respectfully ask again that we'll expand your time a little bit, but on the opposition side, obviously, 16 people won't have that much time to speak. If you could kind of get your points, salient points together, and maybe like a captain over your individual issues, and we can get those presented, and I think the board is intelligent enough to understand what those opposition items would be, and we could take those under advisement. So get a staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Staci Tillman, Office of Planning and Development. For the record, the item before you is PD 19-03. Waste Connections is the applicant. This is a request for commercial and industrial development to provide for the redevelopment of an existing waste transfer station, including the construction of office, maintenance, and transfer collection truck parking facilities. Subject property is located at East Brooks Road, 621 East Brooks Road, You have frontage on about 700 feet of frontage on East Brooks Road. We also have frontage on Winchester Road, approximately maybe 30 feet along Winchester Road. This subject property is located in the Whitehaven area of the city. The screen before you is simply a zoomed-in aerial of the subject site, slightly not as visible as I had hoped. The property is trimmed in red. As you can see, it includes two parcels. One parcel to the east is about 9 acres. The parcel to the west is a little over 30 acres. So the existing sites, including both parcel to the east, has an existing structure. As I mentioned, this is a waste transfer facility operation, so that structure does exist on that parcel. The parcel to the west is more of your vacant parcel, and it does have zoning across both parcels to include both heavy industrial as well as light industrial. As you can see from the slide above you, I've tried to highlight the subject property with the red circle. Again, two parcels. Parcel to the east side of your screen, fronting on East Brooks Road, is zoned heavy industrial. Your parcel abutting that to the west is zoned both heavy industrial and employment, which is a light industrial classification. And that parcel is divided with those two zoning districts. Your northern portion would be heavy industrial zoning. Your southern portion would be employment, which we call light industrial. When developing these parcels that are categorized for waste-related service, again, I mentioned that the primary principal use of these sites would be the affiliation of the waste transfer station. We look to the UDC Use Standards 295E, which characterizes this particular principal use with various uses, one of them being garbage refuse collection service, as well as solid or liquid waste transfer stations. So you see the principal uses are both categorized under waste-related services. You do have your accessory uses, which would be your office and your parking for such use. I show you this screen just to give you a bit of a context. This site has been in operation for quite some time. I believe it predates the UDC at least 30 years. I believe the site was established back in the 1990s, and which would have allowed the site to be in operation under the 1981 zoning code. If you look at this chart in your left side of your screen, if you scroll to near the bottom, you'll see a principal use called garbage or refuse collection. And if you scroll towards the right of your screen, you'll see that that use was permitted both in the heavy industrial IH as well as your light industrial district, or IL. So both uses, both zoning districts allowed garbage and refuse collection service at the time that this site was activated back in 1999, establishing the use. The slide before you is a bird's eye view. You'll see from the yellow outline, again, we have two parcels, somewhat smaller parcel and a very large vacant parcel. Your smaller parcel does contain the existing operation for the applicant, so that this is a flip image. Your north would be to the bottom of your screen, and your south would be to the top of your screen. So as you can see from the screen, you have a very large vacant parcel, and you also have a smaller parcel with existing structures. So the applicant is proposing to redevelop these two sites, these two parcels, and allow them to redevelop the operation by relocating the structure that's located to the west side of your screen in the middle of that smaller parcel to the right parcel, which would be your vacant land. So the proposal is to move that current maintenance facility to your west, to the vacant parcel. Also, you have the existing waste transfer station, and that is the building where your trucks would come in and transfer that material on out of the site. So that building back there to the south would be relocated towards the north side of the site along the East Brook Road. So again, the vacant parcel as part of this development would include your new construction of a maintenance and office building. Back just a moment to give you some also context to what's being proposed. The applicant is looking to develop this site in 3 areas across 3 different phases of development. The first area of the site would be an area that would allow the new construction, and I'll show you that here with this screen. If you can see from the screen, development area 1 would be where your office and maintenance facility will be relocated from its current location on the parcel to the east to the parcel to the west. So we would demolish, the applicant would demolish this current structure and rebuild on this vacant lot, and that would be development area 1. Development area 2 is simply the existing parcel where your waste transfer station currently exists, as well as the current office facility. So on development area 2, you would find this site entering into a reorganization, if you will, where this current structure would be demolished and moved to the area to the west. The existing waste transfer station would be relocated at some point closer to East Brooks Road. Now, development area 3 is located towards the bottom of your screen. And remember, I said that this parcel, the large vacant parcel, was divided in zoning. You have the northern portion zone heavy industrial, and your southern portion zone employment or light industrial. That area would be dedicated to future development, and the applicant is proposing to allow, continue to allow employment or light industrial zoning, as well as incorporate warehouse zoning there. So across 3 phases of development, the applicant is proposing to, in phase 1, to dedicate the project to providing an adequate buffer. If you recall from the aerial, these 2 sites are abutted on the south and to the east with a residential development, and that is the Graves Road subdivision. That area is zoned residential 8, so you have a number of existing residences in this area that abut this site to the south and to the east. So the first phase of development, the applicant is proposing to provide landscaping and buffering before any new construction will go or take place. The second phase of development will include the build out of, the final stage of development will include the build out of the new transfer station that I said, remember, was at the southern portion of the screen. So the final phase will include transfer of this station to the northern portion of the site, away from the residential areas as it exists now, but closer to Brooks Road. Now, the Brooks Road area does include zoning. Zoning surrounded with heavy industrial to the north, heavy industrial to the west, and immediately to the east of that parcel, where the waste transfer station exists now, is one of your higher intensity commercial mixed use districts, commercial mixed use 3. So the applicant is proposing throughout this redevelopment to relocate the existing operation, the waste transfer station, closer to Brooks Road, closer to the heavy industrial zoning, and away from your R8 district, which is located at the bottom of your screen. Again, the entire site is proposed for landscaping and screening. Any area that abuts residential property would be provided buffering as well as fencing to mitigate or limit any objectionable views from the resident to the site and vice versa. The applicant did conduct a neighborhood meeting. We did send out notices. The neighborhood meeting was conducted on March 4th, and staff did send out notices to the public. Three public notice signs were placed on the site. We did receive several comments, and those were included in your staff report. And generally speaking, the comments were in opposition to any work, quite frankly, to be done on this site. That in the those comments mentioned that the expansion is not welcome, the redevelopment is not welcome due to the close or the proximity to the site, to the residential area. So those comments were included in your staff report. The applicant will speak to those comments directly at the appropriate time. So the site photos, you'll see from the screen looking down Brooks Road. This is in a heavy industrial area of Whitehaven. Both sides of Brooks Road at this segment of Brooks Road has both heavy and light industrial operations. This photo at the bottom of your screen will show the entrance to the site as it exists today. So the concept plan that has been proposed, if you'll see the image on the screen, you'll see again the major new construction will involve the construction of an office and maintenance facility, basically relocating what they currently have, which is a small metal building on the parcel to the east, rebuilding that parcel or that structure to the west, and including adequate parking for their trucking fleet. So in conclusion, again, this is a redevelopment involving over 38 acres with an existing waste transfer station. The development will take place in 3 areas of the site over 3 phases, with the first phase of development to provide adequate landscaping and screening along the adjacent the adjacent properties that abut the site to the south and to the east, with your final phase of development providing the brand new waste transfer station to take the place of the former one. And that will relocate that building closer to East Brooks Road and further away from the residential areas. So we have conditioned, staff does recommend approval. Staff does believe that this is an appropriate use of the site, as well as the conditions that we recommend will allow for this to be a very good proposed commercial and industrial development. We have conditioned the site to require site plan review, such that any final plat that's submitted will have to come back before this board. There are some conditions that speak to the exclusion of certain uses. There are some conditions that also speak to in the event that any use would require special use, that it does come back to this board for consideration. And we feel like that is a condition that will help us to go forward with that area that is still determined to be future development. As you can remember from the concept plan, we don't have an articulated plan for that area, and we feel that leaving that wide open would be somewhat a dangerous situation without further review. So we did add that condition, and we ask that you would consider approval as staff has recommended. Now, there are conditions that the applicant has proposed that we modify. I did pass those out to you, and I will read them, and they are Roman numeral 6, which would be providing landscaping and screening. So Roman numeral 6, item E, would read: a minimum 10-foot in height site-proof fencing and screening shall be provided along any property line abutting any building used for residential purposes, as well as the south property line of Development Area 3, subject to final review and approval of the OPD. berms or additional landscaping to limit direct views from residential areas into the site may be required. We also have added a new condition to that area, Roman numeral 6, under landscaping screening. Item H reads a landscape plate class 3, type B or C, along with a 10-foot high site-proof fence shall be provided along the south property line of development area 3. The last condition that we would like to amend would be Roman numeral 11, and the category would be other. The following notes shall be illustrated on any final plat recorded with this plan development. And those items are number 1 and 2 shall read, item number 1, backup alarms or on vehicles and equipment shall emit a narrowly directed signal of white noise as consistent with the latest technology so as to eliminate the ambient warning noise activity as a significant nuisance for neighbors. Item 2 would read, the operation shall be conducted so as not to create a nuisance or cause undue noise, vibration, dust, odor, or incandescence to adjacent properties. The premises shall be kept in a neat and clean condition at all times. Any wind-blown debris shall be collected daily and deposited into appropriate containers. Now, we will ask that you eliminate the item that reads, no loose paper or debris shall be allowed on site. We ask that phrase be taken from that condition, and further would read, dusty condition shall be corrected by sprinkling with water or use of calcium chloride or some other approved method. Waste material or debris shall not be burned on site. So I believe that we have adequately addressed the requested changes to those conditions. Hopefully the applicant will correct me if I've not read those correctly. But that does conclude my presentation, and I can entertain any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tillman. Excellent job. All right, applicant? Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Ms. Wilbanks has a question for you.
Just for clarification, the east side of development area 3 will have landscaping, correct? We keep talking about the south side. I just want to make sure the east side was. Side of development area 3, it will have the landscaping.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great.
Okay. All right, sorry about that. All right, thank you, Ms. Tillman. All right, applicant?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Gene Bryan, Caissa Public Strategy, 5100 Poplar Avenue, Suite 1720. I'm sorry. Before I begin, I'd like to get clarification on the conditions. I believe what we submitted, and I think we're in agreement. I just think it was, I just want to make sure that we're correct on this. For condition 6, under landscaping and screening, condition E, that where it says, as well as the south property line of development area 3, that language would be struck from the E condition, and we would replace that with a new H, which states a landscape plate class 3 type B or C along with a 10-foot high site-proof fence shall be provided along the south property line of development area 3. The Bells asked for, we have topographical issues between most of the property that we adjoin and our property. With the Bells property, it's flat, so we can do a standard screen, and that's what we agreed with Bells Enterprises on. And then for...
Right, well, let's go one at a time. Let's make sure. So, Ms. Tillman, are you up to speed with what he's...
I'm
not
getting
sure.
up to speed.
I
I'm
know,
sorry.
me too. I'm not sure if he's proposing something or if he's clarifying something you've already said.
I think what's happening is we're getting some clarification on the recommended amendments to the condition. So for Roman numeral 6, if I can read that as it should read, if you don't mind.
Chairman, may I make a suggestion? Let's have the applicant give a presentation. Let's have the opposition speak, then a rebuttal, and sometime in that, there's a meeting of the minds related to these conditions.
Okay, I was even going to suggest going to another case and coming back and let them work it out, but that's fine. So go ahead and make your presentation, and during the rebuttal, during the opposition portion, you guys can put your heads together. You come back in the rebuttal period and tell us where you land.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead.
So go ahead and make your presentation on the case.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is an opportunity to create a better environment for this neighborhood and to allow Waste Connections to run a more efficient operation here on Brooks Road. Approval of this application brings a massive package of infrastructure improvements to the property, including improvements to the community. Rejecting it changes nothing from the existing conditions. Here with me today to answer your questions as we proceed through this application are Mr. Bobby Ladley and Matt Crockett from Waste Connections, Bob Pitts and Jason Youngblood from Pickering, and Adrian Bond and Jasmine Wilson from Caissa Public Strategy. Just to understand the site itself, the city of Memphis purchased this property in 1987 and established the waste transfer station on the property. They then sold the property to a private company in 1999 that has, through mergers and acquisitions, become Waste Connections. But the point is that the trash transfer facility is here to stay. It was properly developed originally. It was rebuilt under proper zoning code. It is a legal non-conforming use, but it is here to stay. It can't be made to move, and it can't be made to make other site improvements on the property. But Waste Connections wants to make improvements. Specifically, they brought in Mr. Ladley to clean up the site and make Waste Connections a more efficient operation over the whole site, over the whole property that they have acquired, and to improve things with the neighborhood. Since he's been here, he has hired employees to make sure that the site is picked up on a regular basis. He has installed odor control devices within the transfer station. And he has activated a neighborhood contact line so that they get direct access to Waste Connections with any issues that they have. But his main objective is to make improvements to the property and by improving the conditions to the neighbors and make Waste Connections a more efficient operation. As you can see on the screen, all of the operations of waste management are now conducted on the east property, the east 9 acres of the property. It is a highly congested site. It has the office, it has the maintenance facility, it has truck parking, it has container parking, it has the transfer station. The movement of trucks, the movement of employees is very congested on the property. They want to alleviate that congestion, and they want to be able to move things away from the neighborhood. They understand that the things that are on their property, the neighbors don't like, and they want to address that. So the goal of the application is to benefit the neighborhoods and make Waste Connection a better place. Approval of the application means that Waste Connections will first provide the landscape screen and buffering to the adjacent residential properties. Rejection means that there will not be that screen and barrier put in place. Approval of the application means that we'll move the trucks away from the residential area and move them over to the western portion of the property. Approval of this application means that we'll move the fuel center or the fueling island with the odorous diesel fuel and move that away from the neighborhood. Right now it's on the south end of the building. Rejection means that that stays right where it is. And most importantly, approval of this application means that at a point in the future, a modern, state-of-the-art transfer center will be constructed away from the neighborhood up on Brooks Road. That is very, very important. Mr. Chairman, members of this board, again, you have the opportunity to make this a better place for the neighborhood and for the employees of Waste Connections. Approval of this brings a whole package of improvements to the property, again, that will better the neighborhood, it will better the city of Memphis, and it will better Waste Connections. A vote no leaves the neighborhood and Waste Connections with no approval or with no improvements at all. Thank you. I'd like to reserve the balance of my time for rebuttal.
All right, well, you've got a rebuttal period, but you don't have a balance of your time. You went over, but that's okay. All right.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Coles?
Mr. Bryan, could you tell me if this redevelopment of the transfer station, will it be increasing capacity or will it be the same?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ford, I did not, or Mr. Fowler.
Well,
I'm sorry, Mr. Tolles, I did not hear the question.
Oh, okay, I'm just trying to find out if the transfer station will be expanded or will it be the same size as the existing transfer station?
They do not know at this time. The technology of transfer stations are changing. And how they handle the actual transfer is changing to make it less of an impact in terms of leachate and odor. So it could be bigger, it could be the same size. At this point, we don't know. As I said, the technology has changed quite a bit over the past 3 or 4 years and is projected to change more in the future.
I see. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? All right, thank you, sir. All right, opposition. Again, I'm going to expand the time. I'll put the timer on 10 minutes, and there's no particular order. Y'all come on when whoever's ready. And again, I'll apologize on the front end to whoever is the next person online when the time is up. If you are one of the speakers, please be courteous with the overall time that everybody's got. Have your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Yvonne Denise Nelson. My address of the past 26 years, since January 8th, 1993, is 3519 McCorkle Road, here in Memphis, Tennessee. I come before you today as president of the McCorkle Road Neighborhood Development Association, Incorporated of Memphis, a nonprofit 501c3 I helped found in March of 1994. Thank you. Can we put page 8 up? Page 8. But let me start on page 8 for those of you who have a staff
I'm sorry,
report.
I don't. Are you referring to the staff report or?
If I had known I could have made a presentation, I would have. Yes. Let us start on page 8 of your staff report, where we can obviously see, as compared to previous pictures, that Waste Connections has already expanded into adjacent land they purchased without notifying the community, the Land Use Control Board, or the Office of Planning and Development. This is only one reason why we, the residents of the South Haven Heights, Graves Road Subdivision Section A, and nearby neighbors wish to protest the City of Memphis and Shelby County Office of Planning and Development Land Use Control Board's decision to approve the expansion request of Waste Connections of Tennessee, LLC, in our neighbors' backyards. Money equals power, and it has become very obvious to us that Waste Connections has so much money that they are able to do and to make happen whatever results they wish. I have personally witnessed Waste Connection trucks traveling north from Winchester Road to Brooks Road, utilizing my street, McCorkle Road, a no truck route street, as part of their regular travel route. And I've seen with my own eyes Waste Connection trucks littering Brooks Road and Elvis Presley Boulevard as they travel from their waste transfer facility station at excessive speeds while hauling commercial equipment for delivery. Are we supposed to be delighted that Waste Connections has hired one person to clean 9+ acres of land? It was littered, as usual, on my ride here today. Filthy. Trash all outside and inside the fence line. Why doesn't this person clean outside of their fence? Whether slight or not, everyone from the local news anchor Joyce Peterson of WMC TV5 and WREG reporter Andrew Ellison have commented on the smell. Fortunately for them, they don't have to live in it and smell it every day like we do. A March 2018 report from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Division of Solid Waste Management, made the following observations. They saw a potential for releases of solid waste and waste handling not conducted on paved surfaces. Additional comments stated waste outside of tipping floor along West Side, and there was a comment regarding a truck clean-out facility in the same area and something about a used oil generator with the initials NVO. And I'm, of I don't know what that means, but it didn't look good. My problem is that there's no compliance date given to this organization for these obvious violations. Nothing to correct these three issues. An August 2018 complaint to the Shelby County Health Department Pollution Control detected a slight odor and mentioned also in 2008 that a new facility was to be built in 2019. According to the City of Memphis, Section 16-46 and the Shelby County Section 3-1A, the definition of an odor as adopted into Chapter 1200-3-2 of the Tennessee Air Pollution Regulation as effective 1/1/1998 states, an odor is a sensation of smell perceived as a result of olfactory stimulation. An odor is deemed objectionable and therefore a nuisance when 1/3 or more of a sample of persons exposed to it believe it is objectionable in usual places of occupancy. We live there. The sample size is to be at least 25 persons, or when fewer than 25 are exposed, 1/2 must believe it to be objectionable.
Okay, ma'am. I think we get your point. You've actually used your entire side's time in the full 10 minutes. I need to move on to some other people and be fair to them and give them some time. If you've got a minute of closing that you can do, that would be much appreciated. But again, my protocols are set, and I need to move on.
This code, City of Memphis Ordinance number 4320, adopted May 2nd, 1995, effective 6/7/1995, Shelby County Ordinance number 159, effective 5/14/95, amended by Shelby County Ordinance number 171, effective 1/12/96, amended by City of Memphis Ordinance number 4636, effective 1/7/99, amended by Shelby County Ordinance number 203, effective 9/18/99, pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 68-201-115, is applicable in the City of Memphis.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to move on to the next speaker, please, ma'am. Does anybody have any questions for the speaker? All right, we're going to move on to the next speaker, please, ma'am.
I am the next speaker.
Well,
I am the next speaker.
ma'am, your time is up. I'm being as I have from the first moment that I have cards from 15 different people who wish to speak. Raise your hand if you wish to speak. Are you representing the entire neighborhood? Okay, then that's fair enough, and that time is now up. Nobody else on these cards wishes to speak at this time?
You can read what I got here.
Okay, so we got to make a decision here. If she's representing everybody, she is. I give a couple of people 1 minute, but like I said, we got to move on. Some of the fear I have is that's a referendum on waste management in general. We're here today to talk about the expansion of their facility. If you have reasons why you don't approve of the expansion of their facility, I certainly can. We can entertain that. So I'm going to do 1 minute per person. I'll do 3 people, and I'm trying to do everything I can to maintain what I'm charged with. So.
I understand.
Go ahead,
My name is Mary Boyd. I'm at 3295 Brevard. I'm right directly behind the facility, and My problem is it stinks very bad. There's rats that comes into my backyard. I've been trying to get this place closed down for the longest. I have to call the health department every year to bait for rats and stuff. I mean, that really just makes no sense. I've talked to Waste Connections on numerous occasions. They do nothing about it. They call themselves building a little fence, 6 feet. This is where they got this 10 feet, but it wasn't supposed to be 10 feet. It's supposed to be taller than that they're talking about now. They built a little fence to try to cover up what they were doing there. They built trees back there. Nothing is covering it up. I have pictures right here, right now. I have the health department statements in my envelope right here that I could pass around to you all, right in the back of me. It's ridiculous. All the trucks, they had the trucks against the fence at one time. The smell was so bad till my people do not even want it. My family, I can't even have any kind of functions on my patio.
All right, again, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. A vote here today is about the expansion of their facility. If we were to vote no, what they currently have is still there, and so those grievances to me are more like you say with the health department, maybe Office of Planning Development, code enforcement, and those kind of things. So we are well aware of the downside to what any kind of waste facility or landfill facility would be. Gosh, we've had 15 of them in front of us in the years past. So I want to stay focused on whether people are concerned about the expansion. That's what we have in front of us.
We
okay.
are.
I understand, but you're talking about what the current situation you're
What's
involved
happening
in.
now is going to happen when they do this.
And that's the point I want to make. Is I'd like you to say that hey, we got a bad situation now. We don't want them to expand,
exactly.
And then we get it.
If they expand, they're going to do the same thing.
Yes, ma'am.
It's going to be even worse.
And I appreciate that's the point I wanted you to make. That was perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, one more.
My name is Isaac Northern. I live at 914 Twickletown Road. I have been at that residence since 1975, and like most of the residents in the area, we've all been there before. We were all there before the transfer station was conceived and built in our neighborhood without our input. Staff had indicated that there were improvements being made to the site, and we will agree that what's been stated does offer some improvements, but the opportunity to have made these improvements existed long ago. The complaints that have been filed against Waste Management didn't just start with this application. The complaints have been continuous for years. The request for some relief with fencing and with planning has always been there and never considered by Waste Management, but now all of a sudden they're going to improve the site and make it better for the neighborhood. And as their representative said, if nothing's done, nothing changes. And to me, that's a slap in the face of the neighborhood, because the neighborhood has tried to be good neighbors to Waste Management. Waste Management has not tried to be good neighbors to the neighborhood. And even though some of these things that they're proposing are improvements for the site, they could have done this years ago. We don't trust that they're going to do it now. And I understand the enforcement policies for the commission or for the board, but the neighborhood doesn't trust them.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, I think we're going to move on to the back to the applicant at this time for a rebuttal period. Man, we've been on 18 minutes on a 5-minute time period. I said early on that I would apologize to the person that was next to speak. Are you the final one that wishes to speak? All right, you come on up. I'll give you 1 minute. And I understand you take off work, time to come down here. I get it. I'm not trying to be hard to deal with, but again, I'm just trying to stay on our protocols. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Annette Garner. I stay at 3279 Brevard Drive in the area that we're talking about. And I just wanted to say that, of course, I appreciate you saying I took off work, but I am retired. And that's what we're looking at here today, because from what they were saying, the variance that they have at their present location, they want to move where their administrative offices with this variance to the new location of their expansion. And if they do that, then what we're dealing with is what we're dealing with now, these chemicals that back when they first got the variance has changed. They have more contracts and they're picking up garbage from other places. So our concern is that we live with this every day. And if their expansion, what they're expanding is getting ready to cover our entire neighborhood there. It's 20 homes. From one side, let's say from the west to the east, it's like a cove, a whole U that they're getting ready to expand to. And that's what our concern is. With everything you've heard about all the other areas, we are there. And the fence that they're talking about, if you stand, you can put your finger through this fence. So they're garbage in our yards, and we are concerned. I appreciate your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. All right, we'll go back to the applicant for a rebuttal period.
Okay, Adrian Bond, 5100 Poplar Avenue, Suite 1720. I want to first make some clarifying points in response to some comments that have been recently made. Waste Connection does have a full-time staffer responsible for not only cleaning on site, but also on the exterior frontage of their property along Brooks Road and on the side street. So they're trying to address some of those concerns that the neighbors, have of course addressed. An odor control system has been recently installed at the transfer station to address some of the odor, complaints that the neighbors have addressed. And a hotline now has been established as well. So Waste Connection is trying to be proactive in their efforts dealing with the community. There is no hazardous materials. Everything that Waste Connection brings to this site are household items, your normal trash items. A reference was made about rats and different things like that. Both the health department and TDEC to this date have no violations on file. So I want to make sure we clarify that. Has Waste Connection been the best neighbor since they've been in existence? I'm not going to argue that point. I think we want to talk about what's going forward. I hope that you all see the long-term benefits that this development brings the community while allowing Waste Connections to effectively address those concerns the neighbors have expressed. We're dealing with an infrastructure problem. As the site sits right now, there's not a lot of room to move containers, trucks. You're in a tight area. Allowing this, and I want to clarify because the word expansion has been used. This is not an expansion. This is an improvement to their site. There are certainly people up here that are upset about how Waste Connection has been in the past, and we're not here for history lessons. Our primary concern is being able to address those issues that the adjacent neighbors have expressed to us. There are quite a few people that live a mile, 2 miles away that we met and we talked to during the community meeting. Ms. Boyd, who just spoke, we went to her house. We saw the concern. This was one of the primary reasons why we suggested to Waste Connections to increase that barrier so that you could block that site, so you can increase that buffer zone between the neighborhood and the operations that Waste Connections currently has. It is not sufficient right now. I must say, but supporting this application allows for us to increase that buffer zone, allows for Ms. Boyd not to have to look into the site. Okay. All right, what I will close on is that we need you to vote yes to allow the office and truck maintenance facility to be moved farther away from houses. We need you to vote yes to allow the containers and fuel islands, and most importantly, the transfer station to be moved further away from the neighborhood. A vote yes ensures that the community gets the massive improvements it deserves and will allow Waste Connections to effectively address the concerns the neighbors have expressed long term. We appreciate your time and patience, and we hope that you understand that. Thank you.
Sir, anybody have any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Fleming.
Question. Can you clarify for us, please, Mr. Bond, what that the purple area that's being vacated and moved to the west, what is going to be happening on that part of the site?
In that bottom part, you've got truck parking in that purple bottom part. All of the areas in purple would be moving to the adjacent property. So that truck parking that's down at the bottom would move to the adjacent property. The office and truck maintenance building, all of that that's in purple would move to the adjacent property.
Then what happens to that?
It's vacant.
It's been vacant asphalt or?
Yes.
How do you use that? Is there asphalt on the site, or attempting to want to?
Mr. Fleming, there are two different types of trucks that are operated on this site. The standard collection truck that you see on the streets, and then a transfer 18-wheeler that they put the trash into to take to the landfill. In the area immediately east of the existing transfer station will be a staging area for the trucks to be loaded in the transfer station and then taken off site. The area where the existing maintenance building is will be truck parking for when they're not in the loop of being moved off the property. Now, when they come back from the landfill and they're not going to take another trip, they will be parking where the office and maintenance building are.
It's still truck parking, I suppose.
Yes, but right now that area is full of collection trucks that are double and triple parked.
Okay.
So it just opens the site up and eventually allows things to get moved around so that everything flows efficiently on site, and we can construct the new transfer station. And that will be subject to site plan review, and you'll see better details of how that future will provide for better circulation of trucks on and off the property.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How many people attended the meeting when you had it? The public
meeting?
Yes.
I think it was 24.
Had that many people there?
Yes, 20. It was 24 total.
Do you feel do you think that the majority of citizens who come down today speaking opposition really understand what you want to do?
Well, I think they're speaking in retrospect into the things that Waste Connection has done previously, and that's been the biggest problem that we've had dealing with the neighbors trying to express it. We're trying to move forward to this day. I think some of the neighbors that we talked to and went to the houses understand and can see the benefit of not being able to see in Waste Connections, but because Waste Connections, to their point, they have not been happy with the way Waste Connections has been as a neighbor. So I think they've let that block anything that can be perceived as something that can be positive. And I mean, we were brought here to essentially put the deal together to allow it to happen. And so we wanted to do whatever we could to address all of the neighbors' concerns as related to odor, as related to the site, as related to the debris that's on the property. And we put things in place to address that temporarily, but the long-term benefit and the long-term solution is to be able to have as much of that type of operation on the adjacent property that allows for more room and creates a much larger buffer zone between the neighborhood and the site.
You think going forward to the council, we'll be able to communicate more with these neighbors and reassure them?
Yes, yes, we will continue. Yes, we will continue the dialogue, and I have a couple of people that were lined up even this weekend to go and talk to specifically as it relates to the type of fencing that they would like.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am, Mr. Carter?
I don't know if I have a question, but in the executive session, I felt
do we want to get a motion and go to the discussion portion, or
let's
this is
do
about
that.
a question for the applicant? Or okay, all right, let's get a motion.
19-03.
Second.
Got a second. All right, now we're at the discussion portion. Go ahead, Ms. O'Connell.
From the executive session, I got the impression that everything was moving away from the neighborhood and that it would be a benefit. And in this discussion, I'm not sure that that's the case. It seems that it's just expanding, but if we're leaving parking of the trucks right where it is now, that doesn't sound like it's an improvement to me. And the buffer zone doesn't seem to be that improved, especially if we are expanding this site so much. So I'm less certain about this than I was up there.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Sharp.
Since the representative could not say whether there would actually be an expansion of some of the items that's going on, such as the container storage area, he said he didn't know. And then all of the fencing in the world, whether it's 3 feet high or 20 feet high, does not eradicate smell. So because of that, I would not be willing to go along with this.
Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Tolles.
First of all, I would like for the representatives who are here opposed to the project, the application, will you please stand? All right, thank you. I realize the engineers and planners have done their best to, as Mr. Bryan said, to create a better environment in this area. But I'm very familiar with the area along Brooks Road in Winchester. And it's an eyesore as you go through there, but I know it's zoned what it's zoned, and it's already been stated, Waste Connection is there to stay. Whether they get this improvement or not, you'll still have the same concern. But my concern is that moving the waste transfer station to closer to Brooks Road, it really doesn't substantially help the odor and those type things in doing that. So you're not getting much improvement there. And actually, when you move it closer to Brooks Road, it becomes more of an eyesore, to the people that's transferring down Brooks Road. And I know we're trying to improve Whitehaven, Elvis Presley is being improved, and they're really trying to upgrade the neighborhoods. We can't do much about what is already passed and what Waste Connection is doing. But I know a lot of the residents south of Winchester have complained about the odor that they have there. And just shifting things around is not going to make that big an impact on that. So I just can't support an expansion, because that means that if you expand, I know you're saying you don't know, but if you build a new facility, you're probably going to have more trucks. You're probably going to have a larger capacity, so that means more garbage is probably coming in. So to me, that seems like you would increase the odor and all the other environmental issues that are surrounding there. So I just can't support this application the way it is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tolles. Anybody else have any comments? Bryan, one of the things that was reiterated during the rebuttal period, I was a little surprised to hear, was it was in order to, if you grant us this expansion or modification, whatever you want to call it, then we'll be able to make the improvements to the objections that the neighbors have. Shouldn't we be addressing those anyway?
Mr. Chairman, as the site is currently laid out and the things that are on the property, we don't have the room to build an adequate buffer. If I can get technical for just a moment, on the south property line, there is a 10-foot grade difference between the residential properties and Waste Connections. So to build a berm or a wall and fence to reach 10 feet and have adequate slope on Waste Connections property, it goes into existing areas where things are stored. Okay, and we have no room to move things until we get to be able to shift some of this stuff. But again, the barrier goes up first.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a dirty house, building a bigger house doesn't make you clean up the dirty house. You got to clean up what you got. So I don't agree with that analogy personally, but that's okay. You answered my question. Thank you. All right. Any other comments, concerns? All right, I assume we're ready to vote. Mr. Whitehead, I think we'll have to take a roll call, please.
Ms. Wilbanks. Mr. Tolles.
No.
Vice Chair Sharp. Dr. Pritchard. Ms. O'Connell.
Yep.
Mr. Norcross. Ms. Wallace.
No.
Mr. Fleming. Mr. Chairman. 9 noes.
All right. Next case, please. Thank you for coming. Next case, please.
Agenda item number 10, SUP 19-01, Southeast Memphis Apartments on the north side of Shelby, approximately 800 feet east of Riverdale. Staff recommends rejection.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pritchard. All right, I saw Mr. Smith is here. Do we have any cards on item number 10? Mr. Whitehead, any opposition? All right, we've got an applicant here. We've got some cards in opposition. Again, multiple cards, same scenario. See if we can divide our time up. I've been doing the best I can, but y'all are getting away from me a little bit, so we need to try to divide up our time up accordingly. All right, Ms. Tillman, we get a staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staci Tillman, Office of Planning and Development. For the record, the item before you, SUP 19-01, is a request to allow special use permit request for 120-unit apartment. The subject site is located on the north side of Shelby Drive, about 800 feet east of Riverdale Road. Existing zoning is commercial mixed use too. Again, this is an area in southeast Memphis, north of Shelby Drive at Riverdale Road. We did notify owners within 500 feet of the subject property on March 9th. About 80 notices were sent out. Property is zoned commercial mixed use 2. It's indicated by the blue star. It is surrounded by commercial mixed use 2 to the west with the commercial district zoning designation. Also to the south with commercial mixed use 1. Immediately to the north is residential. To the east is conservation agricultural, and subdivision is located to the north as well. The image before you is a bird's eye view of the subject property. The yellow shaded area would be the approximate subject site. It is an 8+ acre site. It is vacant, and as you can see from the slide, it sits right in the middle of the commercial district, but it is also a budding residential district to the south of it. Street view of the subject property. Again, it is a vacant 8-acre vacant parcel sitting right abutting a commercial use, which is at First Tennessee Bank. Site plan shows the proposal, which is to allow 120 units. The applicant has proposed to provide 6 buildings, with one of them being a community building. They also plan to provide a playground to the site. Typical elevations were provided with the proposal. As you can see, this is the first sample elevations to be provided. Type 2 would be your second sample or typical elevations. The site has seen previous consideration. Back in 2005, there was a consideration for this site to allow 132 units apartment complex. That development was approved. However, the applicant at that time in 2005 did not go forward seeking legislative approval. So again, the current concept is to include 120-unit apartment community. Staff does not support this request. We have recommended rejection due to reasons dealing with density, location of the property, with the potential adverse traffic conditions. Staff does recommend that this proposal be downsized to accommodate less units. We feel that a proposal that would be basically reduced in half would be less potential to this intersection with multiple commercial uses. We feel like this area is surrounded by an established residential area. Homes have been in this area for quite some time, and the addition to 120 units apartment building would not be a good mix for this neighborhood. So therefore, the scale of the development, from staff's opinion, would not be compatible with the mostly single-family structures in the immediate vicinity. We do recommend rejection. However, if the board so chooses, we do recommend that this, if there was an approval, that the site be conditioned, and those conditions are included in your staff report. With that, Chairman, I don't have any other comments. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Tillman? I will move on to the applicant. Mr. Smith, you've got 5 minutes.
Actually, good afternoon, Chairman and Board. My name is Carl Mabry, 281 Bickford Avenue. And first, I'd like to respectfully disagree with the staff's recommendation. As the staff pointed out, this application was actually, I think, 2005. Another applicant came up before the Land Use Control Board for 132 units, in which it was approved. So actually, by proposing 120 units, we're actually have lowered that density. So it is kind of interesting that, now we're being rejected. What we're trying to do is actually make a $16 million investment into this community, which unfortunately has been seeing a decline. And if you look at the site, we are in a commercial section of the neighborhood in which there's commercial and retail on virtually all sides of it. There's a small part that is the neighborhood, which has several houses, and then there's a park. So actually, we also have a market study that actually, okay, great, it's on the screen. Also, we have a market study which actually shows and proves that that what we're proposing is the best and highest use for this parcel, as well as and then one of the issues that was brought up was dealing with the traffic. Well, Chevy Drive is already a 6-lane street with a turning lane in the center, so actually it can handle more traffic. And we also had a traffic impact study done, which shows that the amount of traffic that we're generating will not be above what is normal. And one of the things too I want to point out is that the fact that because it is commercial and retail, that what we're providing is actually good for those commercial buildings, and in fact they're excited about the potential of having additional clients to their businesses. And I've explained to the residents, we had a meeting, of course, and in essence, some of their concerns that were mentioned about the crime, they were mentioned about property values, but obviously those things are an issue to us as well, because we want the same things. And I know there's a fear about, if there's apartments, then hey, it's going to bring all the bad elements. But what we're building is actually quality, affordable housing, which there's design standards that you saw the rendering. So we're building an apartment that's actually of good quality that would actually, in fact, be maybe better than some of even the houses as far as amenities. And like I said, we're making a $16 million investment into this community, so we're there for the long haul. And just to give a little, I'm actually from this community. I lived there 6.5 years. I have parents and friends and relatives that still live in this neighborhood, so I have a vested interest in making this the greatest apartment community that there it can be. And one of the things that I want to point out as well that it will be professionally managed, so it won't be I think what a lot of the residents think it's going to be in terms of just letting anybody come in, and which will decrease the property values. And of course, not only we're providing housing, But this is a business, so I mean, we're actually making an investment into this community. We're generating more taxes, so it's really a win-win for all in the area. I will reserve the rest of my time for rebuttals, and I ask that the board votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, anybody have any questions for the applicant? All right, we'll move to the opposition. Again, if you can divide your time up accordingly.
My name is Jennifer Baker. I live at 4410 excuse me, Timber Rise Road, which is about 2 blocks to the north of the proposed apartment complex. First, a couple of comments were made here that I want to address. Ms. Tillman mentioned that north of the proposed complex is residential, but it's actually a neighborhood park, a Heroes Park. And also, one of my neighbors here, Mrs. Lindfest, attended the meeting in 2005 where there was proposed apartment complex for that property, and she said that the board did not approve those apartments in 2005. She was here, and she knows firsthand that it was not approved. This application appears to fail the test set forth in the Unified Development Code, section 9.6.9, which says the project will not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, utility facilities, and other matters affecting the public health, safety, and general welfare. The project will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as streets, parking, drainage, refuse disposal, fire protection, and emergency services. The request will not adversely affect any plans to be considered or violate the character of existing standards for development of the adjacent properties. End quote. The land use maps incorporated in the recently adopted Memphis 3.0 plan clearly show that this area is to remain single-family residential. Memphis had, may I go on?
I took the time period and I divided it into 2-minute increments so the bill would give you an inclination as to try to wrap up so we can move on to other speakers.
Okay. Memphis has ample historical evidence that seeding low-income housing in desirable single-family neighborhoods only serves to spread crime and poverty. As a reminder, irreversible damage was done to the communities of Parkway Village, Fox Meadows, and Hickory Hill due to the ill-advised Memphis housing and planning decisions. The Ridgeway Station Police Precinct already has 44 apartment complexes. We do not need or want any more. We, the homeowners surrounding this proposed apartment complex, know that this new apartment complex will bring increased crime, traffic, and litter to our neighborhoods. At the neighborhood watch meetings that are held at the Ridgeway Station Police Precinct, the officers tell us every month, and maps confirm that areas with the highest crime rates are in and around apartment complexes. At the meeting that Mr. Mabry held to inform neighbors of this project, he said that there would be extra police protection and oversight for this complex. But Colonel Worthy of the Ridgeway Station confirmed to me that while the police department does work with apartment managers, this complex would not be treated any differently by the police than any other complex. The already understaffed Ridgeway Police Station precinct will be required to stretch further its scarce resources to address the inevitable increased crime associated with multifamily apartments. Having a large number of residents living in a compact area who are not invested in the neighborhood will greatly increase the litter in the neighborhood and along the streets. A gate is planned between the apartment complex and the neighboring Heroes Park, allowing access to the park from the complex. The large number of renters and children from the apartments will completely monopolize the small playground at the park and leave more litter and prevent the permanent residents in the area from enjoying the park that they support with their tax dollars. The access gate between Heroes Park and the apartment complex will enter a secluded walking trail through the trees. That's part of the park. This secluded area will provide an opportunity for renters from the apartment complex to slip into the park and to actually rob or harm people who are on that secluded walking path. And then they could quickly slip out of the park. The proposed complex is 3 stories high It is higher and denser than anything else built in the area. And
Ma'am.
Yes?
I'm doing the best I can here, but I had, when the bell went, I asked you if you could wrap up your comments, and I mean, you've taken even an additional amount, so I'd like to stop here. I'm going to let one more person speak, and we have got to move on. I explain all the rules. I've explained them 3 or 4 times, and everybody is still just going 10 and 15 minutes each person, and I can't do that. I have a responsibility to the board, to the city, and everybody that's been given to me, and I've got to stay on those protocols.
But it seems that previous cases considered here have gotten more time.
Yes, ma'am, I understand, and you have other opportunities to deal with that, writing letters, talking to the staff, or whatever, but at this meeting, I have to follow the rules. So I apologize, not trying to be ugly to you, but so I'm going to let one more person speak, and we're going to move on to back to the applicant for a rebuttal period.
How much time do I have before I start?
You're going to have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. That's really cutting it short.
Well, yes, sir. But
like
she
I said,
took 12.
You make the rules.
I don't make the rules. I'm following the rules.
Okay, whatever. You know, it amazes me where you have people that lives in New York and Las Vegas that would put money up to build undesirable places in a residential neighborhood. And they're sending 2 point people like these 2 fellows sitting behind me to make it look like they're doing us a favor. Anytime 8 acres of land, 120 units, 3 stories high, and you fill those with people, you're asking for trouble. All of the crimes, and I know none of you all up there would want to live in an area where you got that many low-income apartments, and whenever an apartment starts out at $500 a month, that's low income. Mostly anybody can move into them. You wouldn't want to live there, and I wouldn't want to live there. I live east of where they want to build it. The homes in that area starts from $150,000 all the way up to $300,000 to $400,000. Crime will filter out into our neighborhood. All of us are concerned about where we live at. I'm sure all of you all are concerned about where you live at. And anytime you pack, and that's what they're doing, 8 acres of land, and all these things that they're proposing is preposterous. They ain't no in the world they could do it. And to say that you're helping the neighborhood is declining. That's a lie. The neighborhood is not declining. The neighborhood is prospering. So don't come here and say, then it said what the police are going to do. The police was at one of the meetings and said, no, we didn't promise you that. They say all of these things to try to encourage people. They've had several meetings, and all of the meetings that they had, all of the people there that lives in the neighborhood said they do not want those apartments in that area. This is a residential area. Why would you want to put some low-income apartments around residential area? I'm sure, I don't know where you all live, but I know you wouldn't want it in your neighborhood. So we're going to ask you all to deny this. This doesn't make sense. People have spent all of their hard-earned money trying to build a livable place to live at. Some are buying their home, and some have already paid for the home. And now some people's going to come in, some man with some rich person that lives out of town have hired these 2 fellas here to make it look like we're getting a good deal. That's not a good deal. You all know it, I know it, and everybody in here know it. And we're asking you all to deny this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're going to go back to
I filled out a card. Can I speak for a half a minute?
I'm getting ready to ask for permission for you to speak, Mr. Turner.
Okay. Ms. Sharp has requested that you have your time to speak, so I'm going to set it on 2 minutes just like I did for the previous speaker, and you can do your thing.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Quincy Turner, 7664 Richmond Circle North, Richwood Subdivision, 25-year resident of the neighborhood. I'll be very brief here. It's going to increase litter and crime, and we fought against this before in some other situations here. But let me list the reasons why this should be denied. Density is too high for the acreage in that area, for the land. The zoning is improper, and it should be commercial retail, not mixed use. 3, it's going to have a negative effect on the surrounding property values. This is a stable neighborhood with valuable houses in the area, in the neighborhoods. 4, possible increase in taxes due to overcrowding at the Ransom Elementary School, Germanshire Elementary, and Southwind High School. Severe traffic congestion at Shelby Drive in Riverdale, which is a terrible street. The area is suffering from the effects of gentrification, where low-income people are relocated to outlying middle-class neighborhoods where residents are being destabilized. We've seen this before in outlying areas of the Shelby County and the city. Economically, this is disastrous for residents because many like me will be possibly forced to move or relocate due to crime and litter. So you have in that situation First Tennessee Bank that sits right there on Shelby Drive. I'm sure that they may have to relocate also. You have a strip center that has been built across the street that has generated quite a bit of traffic. So it's a lot of traffic on Shelby Drive, despite what the developer says that it's a big wide street. It's a lot of traffic at that intersection and Riverdale. I asked that any waivers be denied in the application because they're in violation of the UDC. And that's what all I have to say on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll go back to the applicant for a rebuttal period.
Thank you. I'd like to comment on a couple of items. Number one, I've been born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, so I'm actually from here, so I'm not sure where they got the thing about an out-of-town developer. Not really sure about that. What you see is what you get. And actually, we built another project that actually about half away, which is thriving. So we have a track record in this neighborhood of building quality housing. And again, we're not building, as I mentioned, low income. We're building affordable housing, which is a difference, in which we're building housing for working class people like firemen, teachers, people who actually work at the Kroger and the other retail stores. Secondly, I want to point out that staff mentioned that the previous applicant back in 2005, that it was approved for 132 units, in which we're asking for a little bit less than that. And the land is already zoned for commercial misuse, so we're not really proposing something that's detrimental. And also, staff want us to actually lower the amount of unit types. So we don't have an issue with changing to just 1 and 2 bedroom units. That's not a problem, but we still do need to do 120 units because that makes it financially feasible. And also want to point out that just from design standards, it meets really the norm for good designing because you already have around it commercial, and you already have some residential. So what we're actually adding is a multi-family piece. So really, we're doing what's known nationwide as good design of neighborhoods, in which you want a walkable, livable community, and that's what we're actually doing. And like I said, we're making a $16 million investment into this community. And one of the things I want to point out as well is that even though there's residential, we'll have a privacy fence as well as a buffer between the residential side. We also want to incorporate, even though there's an existing park. So we're trying to basically design our property that fits into what's already existing and to really enhance the neighborhood. And as mentioned about the police, well, generally the police, they have an organization with apartment owners. So we're actually going to work with them to help to try to prevent the crime issue, because one of the issues they mentioned, there's crime. A lot of times I think it's really just a fear thing. People are fearful of apartments, but there's nothing that says or statistics that shows, or research shows that apartments will bring on more crime. So I asked the board to actually vote yes and approve us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr.
I have one question for him. Did you say that in 2005 the 132 apartments were approved?
Well, I'm not sure. That's what the staff made the comment, so I wasn't
think the
around.
applicant withdrew. I don't think it was approved at that time.
Okay, I just recorded what the staff mentioned, so I don't really know about that part. So I'm going to lean
I
to
understood that Land Use Control Board approved it, and it did not go forward to City Council, so it did not seek. They withdrew before seeking legislative approval, is what I said.
Okay, I stand corrected. I'm sorry.
All right, thanks, sir. All right, get a motion, please.
Second.
All right, we got a second. Is there any discussion amongst our board members? Any comments, discussions? All right, assume we're ready to vote. Let's see, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
No.
That motion is rejected. All right, go to the next case, please.
Agenda item number 11, SUP 19-03, Whitehaven paid parking lot at 1232 East Shelby. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. All right, is the applicant here, Mr. Kim? Kim, is that you? Somebody who's applicant? You're going to speak?
Me.
You're going to speak, okay. All right, and Mr. Whitehead, do we have opposition on item number 11, or? Okay, Yvonne Nelson, are you here? Miss Nelson, I've got a card for Miss Yvonne Nelson in opposition of item number 11.
That was number 9.
Okay. Well, then she filled out, she filled out item number 11. Okay. So, she filled out 2 cards because I had one for her before. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Ms. Jones, if it's okay with you, I think we're up to speed on the staff report. Does everybody agree with that? Since there's no opposition, does everybody agree? Mr. Fleming, Mr. Tolles, y'all in agreement that we're up to speed? We don't need a staff report?
No, we don't.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go straight to you, Mr. Kim, and give you your opportunity to present your case. Like I said, we discussed it in executive committee, and we've all read the case, so I don't think there's a need for us to have a staff report.
Yeah, my name is Jim Song, the 7886 Winchester Road. I'm speaking for my client, the applicant. And then I listened to the executive session this morning, and then our plan A is easement for fees. That's the best solution for both parties. But the Southbrook Mall, they have 1.5 times larger the building. They're over 120,000 square feet versus my client is 80,000. But they have smaller parking spaces. So structurally, they need more parking. So we are trying to offer the easement for fees to maintain the parking lot. They intentionally disregard our offer. So this is plan B, is to enforce the ownership of the parking lot and the maintenance. So this is the plan B. If approved, this will make the Southbrook Mall return to the table for the co-easement, the agreement, and then with contribution. So that's the plan. If denied, we have to go to the court. And then that's the plan C, because historically there was a kind of lawsuit. My client blocked the entrance, and there was a temporary injunction. Then the preliminary hearing is planned, but somehow, to my knowledge, Southbrook Mall, they didn't come to the hearing, so the lawsuit was dismissed. So we just leave because still we are opening some entrance area in between. So if this is not approved, then we have to go to the court, completely block the entrance. That's what we want to avoid. But that's the only way. They would not listen to us, and then they just disregard. We sent the command, our lawyer sent a demand letter, but they didn't respond even. So this is where we are.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Whitehead.
Of Mr. Song?
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed in the staff report there is a Plan C that doesn't require any action by this body or my staff, that it just involves fencing in the parking lot that I think would bring the neighboring property owner to the table. And I appreciate your honesty that this is, that we are being used, I guess, as a court of equity. Have you thought about Plan C?
Yeah, we are consulting. We have the lawyer. Then we had a conversation, but we really don't want to go that direction. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Get a motion, please.
Move approval of agenda item number 11, SUP 13-03.
Second. We got a second. Any discussion amongst our board members? I would offer one other thing. If somebody was trespassing on me, I'd tow them. I mean, you know, it doesn't cost you a penny. Tow them and they'll learn their lesson. They won't do that. So there's got to be other issues, other ways to resolve that versus here at our place. So, all right, can we, let's see, get a vote, please?
Can I say one thing? I think the bigger question right now is...
Can we get your name
Actually,
and address?
Yeah.
Say again?
Name and address.
My name is Andrew Kim. I'm representing my father who owns the land. I think the bigger question right now is the maintenance of the parking lot.
Okay, we've already heard the case. If you're going to respond to what I said, as far as I said, hey, tow them. If you say, hey, I don't want to tow them, that's fine. But we're in the discussion portion with the board. We've already closed. We made a motion, so we're not back in the public hearing portion of the case. So I apologize. All right. Is there any other discussion? All right, hearing done, I assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? No. That motion carries as a no. All right, next case, please.
No.
Number 13. 13.
Oh,
Your
this is
birthday
our
repentance.
wedding and event
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. All right, the applicant is present, and we've got 3 cards of opposition. Afraid we'll have to have a staff report.
Jeffrey Penzis, Office of Plan and Development, is SUP 1905 COs for a home-based wedding and event center at 6133 Old Covington Pike Road. The applicant is Brett Farms. So this is the location map. It's located in north central Shelby County. This is the zoning map. It's currently zoned conservation and agriculture, and outlined in yellow is the subject property. This is the land use map. It's primarily surrounded by single family and vacant. The vacant land is essentially mostly farmland or forested. And this is just an aerial of the subject property. Here are just some site photos. This is the single family home on the property, and you can see the wedding and event center is kind of a little to the right hand side of this photo and set back. And this is a view of that barn. Another view of the barn. And this is the outdoor space that is immediately adjacent to the north side of the barn. And this is essentially the concept plan. So the house is here, the barn is here, that little outdoor area is here, and there's additionally a horse barn in the back, but that's just for horses. This is the zoomed in version of that. So essentially the proposed concept plan contains a single family house with a ground floor area of a little over 3,000 square feet. Then there's the horse barn that's for a little over 2,000 square feet. And the actual event barn is approximately a little less than 3,000 square feet. And there is the outdoor canopy that is adjacent to the barn, and that's a little over 1,000 square feet. As conditioned, the site would be limited to 160 guests. They would limit alcohol to fermented beverages, which is like beer and wine. The event hours would be limited for Sunday through Thursday between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m., Friday and Saturday between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m., with 1 hour of setup and cleanup pre and post set event hours. Additionally, we added fencing and landscaping along a portion of the northern property line, just because that specific area is adjacent to a single-family residential home. And with that, we recommend approval with conditions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Penzis. All right, applicant.
Tim McCaskill, 7891 Stage Hills Boulevard. This is, the Frans bought this property several years ago, and Mr. Fran is a pastor at a church in Munford. And the way this kind of started out was he would have an occasional church event like a hayride or an Easter egg hunt or have the youth over or something. And the people that would come there liked it and would start asking him if they could have their wedding there instead of in the church. And that's how this got started. And then word of mouth is the way they advertise. They don't advertise as a wedding deal at all. It's strictly word of mouth. We had 8 property owners show up at the neighborhood meeting. 6 of them live on this street, Covington Pike. 1 lived on Pleasant Ridge, just right behind it. And then 1 other one lived in a different neighborhood about a mile away. Of all the people that showed up for the meeting, everybody seemed to be in favor of it, especially the ones that are impacted the most, the ones that live on Covington Pike. We've added conditions to the special use permit to add landscaping, fencing, evergreen landscaping. We've limited the number of guests. We've limited the number of events. And the way this works is they have their weddings either indoor or outdoor. They can have them in front of the barn or behind the barn. They go inside for their receptions. And Mr. Franz is going to insulate that barn. He just built it a couple of years ago. He's going to insulate that barn to try to keep the noise more inside the barn and not go out further into the property. So we're in agreement with the conditions, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCaskill. Anybody have any questions for Mr. McCaskill? All right, we'll move on to the opposition. I've got 3 cards for y'all. In no particular order, whoever wants to go first. And Ms. Pence, can we put the site up that shows the property with the adjoining properties? When you give your address, I want to get you to show me where you are.
Yes,
where
thank
each
you.
person is that's speaking.
Yes, that's exactly where I would like to start. First of all, good morning. I guess early afternoon. My name is Barbara Asamoda. I currently live at 993 North Idlewild, but I'm a new home owner at 6220 Bethel Road. My property is that clear area. That's not correct. That is now where my family has purchased this land. And did not attend the meeting because of notice that was sent to the previous owner. And so now I'm here in opposition to this development. My opposition comes in the change in the character, atmosphere, noise, traffic of this wonderful neighborhood that my family and I decided to build our forever home. The plan has stated that they will have parking, and as you can see, the parking lot beds right into my new home. With the property having the possibility of over 100 guests, that is a lot of parking, traffic, noise, trash, whatever that beds into my new forever home. I also, if you would research the safety of this wedding event center, just recently, a couple of months ago, it had a disturbing event to occur, resulting in severely bodily harm of the owner. A direct quote from the article reads, "The 2 men engaged in gunfire and both were injured. But according to the neighbors, what the criminal surely did leave is a sense of alertness for the people who live in this normally quiet area." And that's why we purchased this land, so that my family, my sister and brother can build our forever homes. And I now give the rest of the time to my sister.
Thank you for that.
Hello, my name is Amy Avan. I currently reside at 2798 Stagecoach.
And going on what my sister said, my family and I purchased this tract of land to build homes on. It is currently divided into 3 tracts. I have the map here, and as you can see, the parcel of the subject property, it indents into our parcel of land. I myself, being a member of the working class, work Monday through Friday, and I look forward to coming home and being able to enjoy my weekends. But I'm afraid that that's not going to be possible if we allow the expansion of this facility. I was looking in the some of the restrictions. I do not want to be a part of a wedding event every Saturday up until 10 o'clock at night. As I stated, we are putting quite a bit of money into this development and our homes, and I think we deserve the privacy that we thought we were getting when we purchased this tract of land as a residential subdivision.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Ms. Williams is still up. You've done a great job of dividing your time up. So there's like almost just like 2 minutes left over in your time for you. So go ahead.
My name is Lana Williams. I live at 6375 Pleasant Ridge Road. I'm not accustomed to public speaking, so just bear with me. This is a residential area. We don't need an event center in the neighborhood. Don't need the additional traffic and noise and crimes. I think it's an invitation for other people to come in and buy 5 acres and say, I'll set up my business here. We just don't need a business community. It's a long-established residential area. I've lived there 25 years myself. That's really about all I have to say, except that ask, would you like something like this to be put up next door?
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. Anybody have any questions for any of the opposition? All right, get a motion, please.
Approval of
Mr.
agenda
Chairman,
item.
we have a rebuttal.
Oh, yeah,
period.
I'm sorry, my bad. Mr. McCaskey, we got a rebuttal period.
I know it's getting late, but don't try to cut me
No,
off.
that's my mistake. I apologize profusely. I wasn't trying to be rude to you.
I'd like to say that to answer that last question, would you want this next to you where you live? I don't see anything that wrong with it if it's on 10-acre parcels or 4-acre parcels. If it's in a neighborhood, yes. And I actually know Amy and Barbara. We did the survey on their property when they bought it a couple of years ago, and they don't actually live out there. So what they're getting their opinions from is hearsay, and just the issue about the violence. They think that was a random thing. There was a burglar named Jonathan Lee that was going down through the houses on Covington Pike that night, breaking in the cars and taking stuff out of the cars. One of the neighbors actually got him on video going through his cars. When he got to Mr. France's house, Mr. France saw him, stepped out on his porch, and this Mr. Lee unloaded his gun on him and actually hit him in the face with one shot, put him in the hospital, and he's lost the use of his eye. So it's not like somebody was coming to rob the Franz or thinking that they had a lot of money in the house like one of the letters said. It was just the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was going through every house on that subdivision. They've done a lot to add these conditions. The property behind this is densely wooded. I don't think you're going to be able to see or hear anything from 500 or 600 feet away, which is where this barn and the activity takes place. So I think that the fact that there's nobody on Covington Pike that lives on Covington Pike that has spoken against this, the traffic problem is not as big a deal as people think, and they actually exit their property to the west through the neighborhood next door. They don't even get on Covington Pike. They don't even have access to it. So traffic shouldn't be a problem for that direction. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Anybody have any
questions for Mr. McCaskill at this point? Hearing none, we get a motion.
Second.
Got a second? All right, discussion amongst our board members.
I'd like to ask Jeffrey a question, if you can answer. It was stated that the clear property there that the sister owns, 3 tracks. Do you have something to show where those tracks?
Tells us basically three rectangles.
One of the property lines at the existing I see, understanding. In fact, you mentioned before that there are probably 3-acre tracts, 9-acre tracts, 10-acre tracts.
Right.
Satisfied with that? Mr. Tolles, good? Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. McCaskill? All right. Assume you're ready to vote then. All those in favor of the application say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. That motion carries.
Thank you.
And I believe we are done for the day. We stand adjourned.